Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Natasha, the unconventional Aussie, and today I want to share with you my journey to Islam. I have a lot of information that I want to put into this video, so what I'm going to do is break this video into two smaller videos, and that way it'll just prevent me from repeating myself and waffling on a little bit, and it'll also be easier for you guys to follow. So with that said, let's get started. I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and I lived there till I was about 23 years of age, and then I moved to the UK where I still live today. I came from a Christian background, a Christian household. My mom actually works for the church and also is a volunteer for the church, and my stepdad is a volunteer as well. So they both play quite a crucial role within our local community. And on top of that, I went to a Catholic high school, and so in Australia the grading systems is a little bit different to the UK, so it goes from year 7 to year 12. So I studied religion as a part of that whole time, and it was kind of when I was at high school that I started questioning my religion and started questioning my faith, because I was starting to get more intrigued. I was starting to question things, because when you're young, and I know when I was young, I just kind of went along with the flow. I did what, my parents said. I did what the minister said. I believed what I was told to believe. And it wasn't obviously until high school that I then started to kind of get a mind of my own and started to question things that I was being told, because it just wasn't sitting right with me. It wasn't settling with me. So naturally I just was asking questions, and I was asking questions both to my teachers at school and also to the minister at our church. And the responses I was getting were just never satisfied me. And I always found myself asking 10 more questions about that one question, because it just never sat. It never sat right. And I never walked away getting an answer that I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It was always like, oh, okay, yeah, and again, I was just kind of going on with the flow of things. And then I got to towards the end of my schooling, and I just kind of lost interest in religion. I still believed that there was a God, and I still believed that there was one God, but in terms of me going to church every Sunday, and also going to church other days of the week, and just my general interest in it, I just lost it. And it remained that way up until really recently, if I'm honest. So from that point, I think we'll fast forward to 2016 when I moved to the UK, and I met my now husband, whose name is Osman, and he was a non-practicing Muslim. And what I mean by that is he ate halal meats, and he stayed away from the things that he knew he had to steer clear of, but he wasn't praying, he wasn't fasting through Ramadan, and he wasn't doing those things that associated him with the Islamic way of life. So I never really concerned myself with his religion. I never asked any questions. It was very much an unspoken about topic in our relationship, both because I was uncomfortable about it, and also because we just never really needed to talk about it, so why would we? And then something changed. So again, let's move forward another 3 years, and up until really recently, so it was about May this year, and I noticed Osman doing little things that he hadn't done before, like saying Alhamdulillah after our daughters would sneeze. He would want to say a prayer for them when they were going to bed. And we actually recently had our second daughter in July, Alhamdulillah. And he wanted to say a prayer for her when she was born, which didn't happen with our first daughter. And so little things like that started creeping in. And so I knew something was going on. And so naturally, I questioned him about it. And yeah, he just said to me, well, yeah, I want to start practicing again. I wanted to come to you about it, but I felt really anxious about coming to you. I felt really nervous about coming to you, and I didn't know how to approach it with you. And the reason he felt like that was totally legitimate, because if I'm being completely honest, I didn't like the religion. I didn't like what I knew of it. And from what I knew, which was very media driven, obviously we know that's not the truth, but at the time, I thought I knew enough to know that I didn't like it. So of course he's going to feel that way about it, about telling me. So anyway, he's told me now that he wants to start practicing again, and immediately I felt angry, scared, confused, upset. Every emotion under the sun, I think, passed through me. But the biggest one of all was I was so uncomfortable. I couldn't help but question, like, where does this leave me? And where does this leave our two daughters? Because, like, I'm not a Muslim, they're not Muslim, so where to from here? And it's really quite funny looking back on it now, but I actually remember screaming at him saying, like, I'm never going to be a Muslim and I'm never going to support you being a Muslim. And it is funny to look back at it now because clearly Allah had other plans for me, which I didn't know at the time. But yeah, so it was a really tense and awkward time. And I think it's really important to note in this part that we weren't married at the time. So we only got married recently in October of this year. So really, really recently. And I think me not accepting his religion and him always feeling a little bit like, even if he wanted to practice, he felt like he was never probably comfortable to practice because of how I felt. And that was creating this invisible barrier between us that neither of us knew was there until it was gone. And just, like, our relationship completely changed. So I'm at the stage where I'm super uncomfortable. I don't know what to do with myself. I think I remained this way for maybe like a week. And then it was like I woke up one morning and someone had just slapped me in the face and was just like, what are you doing? Why are you letting this affect you so much? What is wrong with you? How could I be so judgmental of something that I knew nothing about? Like, if I really open-heartedly reflected on my feelings towards Islam, I knew that I didn't really have any factual information. It was all information that I'd gained from the media, or also information that I'd gained from other people who had a negative attitude towards Islam. So both of those sources were not really reputable and were not really reliable. So I kind of was like, okay, like, I'm going to do my own research and I'll go from there. So I secretly started watching videos on YouTube. I started reading a lot. I started, like, collecting PDFs and reading those. And slowly but surely, I started to feel less and less uncomfortable with it. And I remember the first thing that completely, intrigued me was I was really always uncomfortable when Osman would refer to God as Allah. I just felt really awkward with it, and I was just kind of always like, why don't you just call it like God? That's how you call God is God. Like, I was just, I never got it. It never sat with me. I never understood. And the first thing that I learned, so I was watching a 3-part series on YouTube, and it's called Understanding Islam. And I will link it for you in this description, because if you're someone like me at the very beginning of your journey, or if you're looking into Islam and don't really know a lot about it, then this was a really good starting point, because it doesn't really bombard you, but it gives you really good information just to start you off with. So anyway, so I was watching this 3-part series of Understanding Islam, and the first thing that the teacher said was what Allah means. And all it is the Arabic word for God. And immediately I just had this epiphany. I was just like, oh, that's it. My goodness. And immediately I just felt so much better about it and so much less uncomfortable. It was just so strange, but it really intrigued me to find out, okay, so I've had this really strong emotion towards something so small. So what else am I going to find out that I feel really negatively towards, that I shouldn't feel negative towards at all? So I kept watching, I kept reading, and then Osman caught me. He caught me watching some videos, and again, he was like, oh, what's going on? What's happening? And so I said to him, I've been doing some research, and obviously he was really happy that I was opening my mind and actually learning about it. And I said, at that point, I said to him, I feel like I've gotten as much as I can from, where I'm looking. And, I need something else. Like, do you think I should read the Quran? Do you think that would be helpful for me? Or do you think it will be a little bit too much too soon? And he was really supportive, and he was like, no, absolutely, like, read the Quran, definitely. Like, if you have any questions, like, write them down, bring them to me. If he couldn't, so he was saying if I couldn't find the answers, he was going to find them from other people that were reliable, and make sure that he came back with an answer for me within the next couple of days. And he did, every single time, every single question. And I will do a separate video on all of the questions. I have kept them all of the questions that I had about the Quran, because I think it's really important that from my perspective of knowing nothing and reading the Quran and having all these questions, like, it really brought Islam together for me and really, really helped me. So I will do a separate video on that, inshallah. And anyway, so I was reading, and I just gave birth to our second daughter in July. So I had a lot of time on my hands to read whilst I was breastfeeding. So I was up a lot of the night breastfeeding again, so I was just reading. And then during the day, sitting around, I had like a lot of time to read. So that's what I did. And I think it was a couple of weeks, and I'd already gotten past halfway, and I'd had pages of questions, and I was getting really, really into it. And I was getting to the point where I started to believe what I was reading, and it was starting to kind of impact how I was feeling. And, I spoke to Osman about this, and I said, like, this is what I'm reading, and, I believe it. And he said, well, that's really good, like, that's